You know, gang, this is one where I actually walk the line a little bit. If you're not familiar, Ethan Crumbly is a kid who shot up. Well, I guess he's not a kid anymore. He's a young man now. But a couple years back, he shot up Oxford School in Michigan. He killed 4 people. An interesting twist on this is that immediately after he was arrested, his parents fled. They fled. They tried to escape to Canada. They were found in a art gallery. They were hiding out in their friend's art gallery. That's where the law caught up to them. They left Ethan, by the way, to fend for himself in the justice system. Abandoned him. Well, Dana Nessel, the Attorney General here in Michigan, charged these people. He charged them with, amongst other things, manslaughter because of how irresponsible they were with firearms and how much they neglected Ethan, who will spend the rest of his life in prison. If he develops a conscience, he will also have the burden of those 4 deaths to carry for the rest of his life, which will be utter misery. Well, as of today, both Jennifer and James Crumbly, Ethan's parents, have been found to be legally responsible in some degree for that school shooting. Here's the news.
I believe you've selected a 4-person. Who's a 4-person? You're the 4-person. Could you read the verdict, please?
Each count.
Sure.
Count 1, involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin. Count 2, involuntary manslaughter as to Tate Meir. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Tate Meir. Count 3, involuntary manslaughter as to Hannah St. Juliana. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Hannah St. Juliana. Count 4, involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling. Guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling.
Thank you, 4-person.
A verdict in the trial of James Crumbly, the father charged.
All 4 counts. That was James Crumbly. Jennifer's was last week. Already decided. Sentencing will come later. This is where I walk the line. They can get up to 15 years in prison. I'll tell you this. I was rooting for a guilty verdict for both of these folks. Didn't really talk about it on this because that's not the focus of this channel. Is not to affect court cases generally, unless they ought to be had, and they aren't. But now's a good time to talk about it because, in my opinion, this speaks to the American people slowly beginning to take responsibility for the war zone our schools have become. Tends to be ultra conservatives and the families thereof that engage in mass shootings because I feel they have a poor culture. Conservatives do. They don't take personal responsibility for anything. They think guns are toys. They are not the responsible gun owners that they claim to be. I happen to know quite a few responsible gun owners, including people in this audience, who would be appalled at the way the average conservative handles a firearm. They leave these things laying around. They let children play with them. They make light of them. The result, commonly, Ethan Crumbly. He thought an answer to his problems was to take one of those guns that was lying around all the time, to use them to murder a bunch of his classmates. Finally, some responsibility is being insisted upon by the public, by we the people. We're saying you cannot behave like that. You cannot take your responsibility as a parent or as a gun owner so frivolously. You, the people that would abandon your child. At the same time, I'm not looking for the maximum sentence. Again, I'm not going to try to affect it in one way or another, but as I search my feelings here, this is not just a first offense for the parents here. This is the first time this has ever been charged. Generally speaking, my philosophy is to put people in prison as little as possible. Even though I have no respect for the Crumbleys. Even though I hope after they get out of prison, they fulfill their plans to get the fuck out of the country. Maybe change their names, shave their heads, pop on some fake mustaches, disappear. That's probably best. But I don't want them to rot in prison for 15. For so many reasons. One of which being I want a 15-year sentence to have its own value preserved. But also, I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it helps more than, say, 10 years would. 7 years would. The point is to establish what has just been established. You have legal liability when you put children around firearms. Now the courts have finally caught up to common sense. A good sign. It's sad that we required the absolute worst case scenario to occur multiple times before we got around to establishing that. But the good news is now we have established it.